gosh, good morning. And so, football. Because of the football, the prayer meeting tonight is at 6:30, and not, apparently, someone just, it might all be a rumor, I don't know, but that's what I've been told to say. It was Hannah, if I'm wrong. It's Hannah. I wonder how many of us would say that we are competitive people. Anyone in the room would say that? I had a devious moment in the week. I thought that maybe I could devise some kind of a race just to see who the competitive were amongst us. I decided against it. I thought it wasn't going to pass muster with the Health and Safety Risk Assessment Department on account of there being chairs to climb over and things like that, and someone was bound to get hurt. And actually the reality is that person would probably be me, because I have to admit, quite outrageously competitive. And people don't always realize that about me when they first meet me. Usually when I first meet people, I am on my best behavior. But people who know me better, like Lydia, my wife, they will tell you a different story about me. The bottom line is, I am someone who loves to win. I hate to lose, and as tragic as it is, I'm something of a stickler for rules. So what this means is if I play a new game with my friends or family, then I'm probably the one in the corner who's engrossed in the rule book, making sure that everyone is having fun according to the correct protocol. When I play sports, so I play in a badminton group most Wednesday evenings, in situations, for example, like where there's a debatable line call, I am guaranteed to be right in the middle of any debate taking place, and I am always right. What can I say? I've even on occasions been described as sassy, and as a child, one of my favorite phrases was 3 words which are probably infamous for any parent. It was the 3 words, "That's not fair," from a very, very early age. Now, I have, since that age, definitely met other children. I've also met adults who love those particular 3 words, and so I know for a fact how annoying people like me can be. But the point that I wanted to begin with this morning is that, in fact, in reality, people like me are very often correct. We are. There are lots and lots of things in life that are unfair. And children, whoever they are, actually they have to learn that sooner or later, the hard way or not. There are little unfairnesses all of the time that we will encounter as we grow up. For example, someone might get a bigger slice of cake at the birthday party than we do. It's a problem. It's difficult, it's emotional, it's tough. It might be someone getting in front of us to get the last parking space if we're a little bit older, and in a tight-knit space, and we have to rein ourselves in because we're good Christian people and we can't possibly get road rage, and that's that never happens, does it? We don't do that. There are unfairnesses that happen in life, and the reality is that most of the time, actually, the truth is most of these things are not worth really making a fuss about. Unfairness, generally speaking, as they say, what goes around it comes around. Most things, many things, are not a big deal, but sadly, and this is the genuinely sad thing, there are also times in life where unfairness happens, and actually it's a bigger deal. There's times in life, aren't there, when unfairness happens and actually it becomes a pattern, or it becomes something that it has bigger consequences for the people who are on the receiving end of it. And it's these kinds of times, it's those kinds of unfairnesses, or another word that we might use for it is injustice. It's those kinds of times that actually I believe that something ought to be done. I think actually as God's people, we do have a responsibility when there is unfairness, injustice in the world, that when it's a big deal, when the consequences of it are larger and not just smaller, when it is something that is having a deep impact on the people who are on the wrong end of it, it's something that as God's people we are called to do something about. And in essence, it's that kind of unfairness, that kind of injustice that I wanted to speak about this morning, and it's that kind of unfairness which is being addressed by words from the Bible that I wanted to look at briefly this morning together. And these are words which are taken from the book of Isaiah, chapter 58, and I think I'm going to read from verses 6 to 9. And in these words, Isaiah says this. Chapter 58, verses 6 to 9. He says, I'll tell you what it means to worship the Lord. Remove the chains of prisoners who are bound unjustly. Free those who are abused. Share your food with everyone who is hungry. Share your home with the poor and the homeless. Give clothes to those who are in need and don't turn away your relatives. Then your light will shine like the dawning sun, and you will quickly be healed. Your honesty will protect you as you advance, and the glory of the Lord will defend you from behind. When you beg the Lord for help, he will answer, here I am. So these are words in which the Old Testament prophet Isaiah is speaking into a bigger kind of unfairness. He's speaking into a bigger kind of injustice, a kind of injustice that had become entrenched in the social and the economic systems of the Old Testament people of Israel. To provide a little bit of context, the Old Testament people of Israel were a people who had been set apart by God way back in history. They'd been set apart with the purpose that they were going to live for God, and they were going to reflect something of what it is to be like God in the world around them. They were called to be those who reflected God's heart. And part of that meant living in a way as far as possible that did not result in people being unfairly treated. And they started out with great intentions, but over time those intentions, they got a little bit muddied, they got a little bit lost. And the result was that those in poverty, those who were unjustly imprisoned, those who were abused, they have become largely ignored. It wasn't fair. It really wasn't fair. So Isaiah spoke to challenge that situation. He spoke to challenge the status quo. I don't know about you, but I feel that his words are just as relevant, just as powerful, just as important, and just as challenging for God's people today as they were, whatever it was, 2,500 years ago or so when he wrote them. On the one hand, it's sad, I think, to realize that. But actually, on the other hand, I think it presents us with a massive opportunity. It presents us with an exciting opportunity as God's people today to live in a way that does shine his light in the world around us. It's a world that desperately needs to see that light in us. And so there's sadness on the one hand, but there's opportunity on the other in the verses that we've read. And I guess I would love to speak purely about the exciting stuff, purely about the opportunity. But I think if we're going to realize that opportunity, then we also have to start by recognizing the sadness. And that means that we have to spend a bit of time there first. It is sad, I think, that we live in a world where, generally speaking, still social and economic systems, both locally and globally, they operate in ways that can be very much unjust. It's sad that we live in a world where, generally speaking, those who have the resources and the means are favored over those who do not. It's a world where more often than not, those with resources end up with more, those without end up with less. It's just the way that the world seems to have found itself working, much like it did all of those years ago in Old Testament Israel. And this is very much a global thing, but it is also very much a local thing. You know, globally, there are things that we see on the TV all of the time, aren't there? Injustices being committed around the world. I was having a conversation this week just by chance with someone who works for Unseen, which is a charity nationally that works with people who are victims of modern day slavery, but they are based here in Bristol, and they were telling me about the huge surge that they've seen of modern slavery victims in our nation and in our city, in lots of sectors. And they were particularly talking about how in health and social care and the care industry that there are people who are paying astronomical sums of money to come to the UK, to come to Bristol on the promise that they're going to receive contracts for work in health and social care settings, which they never ever do. And they're left penniless, and they're left facing deprivation. They're left using services like the food banks that I spend a lot of my time helping to support. And locally, we see all of this stuff going on around us all of the time. We see, in recent weeks, months, years, the news headlines full of reports about the cost of living crisis. And of course, that is a real thing. The cost of living crisis has been very much real, but actually most deeply it has been felt by those who already have the least to lose. There's been people in our communities who have no idea genuinely how to stay warm in the winter. There's been parents in our communities who have been choosing on a regular basis whether to feed themselves or to feed their kids. And countless people with debilitating health conditions have found themselves unable to access appropriate treatments where those with the means might have paid to do so. And in recent months and years, we've seen things like people borrowing astronomical sums of money from often unscrupulous sources at terrifying levels of interest just to afford life's basics. And as many have grappled in recent months with increased mortgage costs, millions have been subject to enormous rental increases, and no-fault evictions have risen an astronomical rate as landlords have cashed in on demand for their properties, and there's been this housing crisis ballooning beyond all proportion. And here today, right now, I'm deeply aware that there's going to be those of us who have found ourselves suffering as a result of these kinds of injustices, the kinds of things that I've mentioned, but the many others that I no doubt haven't. You might be suffering right now, or you might be in a place where actually your heart is breaking because you're close to someone who is, and honestly, I am sorry. As a Christian, as a follower of Christ, I am sorry, because I don't believe that any of that is okay. I believe instead that the words of Isaiah and the testimony of the whole of Scripture teaches that we've got a mandate as God's people to neither perpetrate injustice or to endorse those who do. Sadly, I don't have the answers for how all of these things can be fixed, but I do believe, as I said earlier, wholeheartedly believe that what these things present us with actually is an exciting, genuinely exciting opportunity as God's people to be light in the midst of darkness. And I believe that opportunity is exciting. And so the second thing that I want to do today is to highlight some ways in which we might be able to do that in practice. And the first thing that I wanted to suggest today that we might all be able to do in response to this stuff is to speak up where we can. Just like Isaiah did. It wouldn't have been easy for him. We read Isaiah, we're like, he's our hero. He's like our man, we think he's great. It wouldn't have been like that for him. Prophets were not popular people in their time. They spoke up. They challenged. They used their influence when people listened, even when people didn't. They spoke of things that God put on their heart. And, wouldn't it be fantastic if God's people were prepared to use their influence to challenge injustice where they saw it today? And it might not even necessarily have to be a huge thing. It might be little things that we could do that would help influence the world for justice around us. And the truth is that I think, enough people doing the same small things, it builds up and it produces a kind of domino effect. It's things as simple as buying fairly traded products. It's things as simple as looking into the origins of our clothing, having conversations with our friends and our families about this kind of stuff. It begins to build up. It begins to change attitudes, and even that can begin to put pressure on people in authority, on businesses, retailers, to conduct their business with greater concern for those who are most disadvantaged. So we can speak up. And then the second way in which I believe that we can respond to injustice is by being willing to provide, to seek to provide for those who are in need. And we read this morning those verses from the book of Isaiah, and he mentioned in there, he mentioned a number of different groups. He mentioned those who are unjustly imprisoned, he mentioned those who are hungry, and he mentioned those who are abused. And there's so many groups that we could add to that list. And I wonder, in what ways might we be in a position to use what we have, whether that is a great deal, whether it is slightly less? How might we be in a position to make a positive difference to those in the world who are in need that we encounter, that God places on our heart? Some of you know already I'm privileged to spend a lot of my time working with an organisation in Bristol called In Hope, which is a Christian organisation, and with them I support local food banks around the city, including the one that we host here at Fishponds Baptist Church. And I also, amazingly, I get to spend some of my time in the week working with the church here, helping to look after tenants who we support through our two Hope into Action houses. And so it goes without saying that I think that these are fantastic ways of responding to injustice in our community. And it is really a privilege to be part of a church community that takes seriously its call to care for those in need, that is already taking seriously that call to be light in the darkness, that is seeking to serve those who find themselves at the wrong end of the injustices and the unfairnesses of our world today. And obviously, if you'd like to be involved with those things that I've mentioned, I'd love to have a chat with you about that. But they're just, of course, a couple of ways. They're just two examples of ways in which we can make a difference, in ways in which we can practically get involved in caring for those in need in our community. But I guess what I would say today is really, whatever it is, do something. Do something. I think one of the most challenging things that we can face in a world where we're so conscious of all of this need around us, we can face this kind of inertia where we see it and it's all so enormous and it's all so vast that we just think there's nowhere that I can begin. I just don't know where to start. There's nothing that I can do that's actually going to make a difference to that. But the truth is that it's not true. The truth is that you can make a difference, an enormous difference, where you are with what you've got. And actually the place where we begin is with God's heart for those who are in need. What we need more than anything is to take his heart in, that our hearts might be changed, that our minds might be changed, that we might receive courage from him in order that we might step up and step out and be the light
that our world needs to see. And on that note, as I kind of draw towards a close, I want to return to that reason why this stuff is so important, and it's really that reason that is illuminated so powerfully by the words of Isaiah that we've read, and that reason why this stuff matters, should matter to us, is because it deeply matters to God. Justice and compassion are right at the core of who God is, and he calls us to be those who are concerned about the plight of the disadvantaged and the marginalized. And because God's heart is for those who are suffering, those who are facing heartache and heartbreak and mistreatment, I guess the first thing that I wanted to say as we just, maybe seek to respond to these words today is, you know what, if you're in that place today, or actually, you've come in today and your heart is heavy, and I mentioned that earlier, whether that is for yourself or it's for someone who you are close to, then God's heart for you is love. God's heart for you is compassion, and God's concern is for you today. God is close to you even if it doesn't feel like that. God is here today even if it doesn't feel like that. And my hope and my prayer for you today is that you would know that, and that you would know something of his light in the midst of your situation. His word says that his banner over you is love. And my hope, my prayer is that you would know that today. But for the rest of us, I guess, as we respond, as we seek to take on board what it means to be light, to be life, to be hope in the world around us, as we seek to see God's kingdom built in this place, let's allow that heart of God to stir us into action. Let's make sure that we are building on the right foundations. Let's be those who act justly, who love mercy, and who walk humbly with our God. And as a result, as Isaiah promises, I believe that we too will see more and more of God's goodness. But most importantly of all, other people will get to see his goodness through us. And there is no greater purpose than that. So I think the musicians are going to come. And if it's okay, I'm just going to just take a bit of time, and we will just pause as the musicians come, and maybe just begin to play as we continue to worship together, because we worship that we might draw near to God, that we might know his heart, that we might be changed by him, that we might live for him. So I want to pause and just take a moment just to be still in God's presence as we come to worship, and then I'm going to pray that his heart would shape us this day. Lord, I want to thank you that your heart is all compassion. I want to thank you that your heart is full of kindness. I want to thank you that your heart is full of grace. Lord, you are the one who has already stepped in, and you do so time and time again into situations of brokenness, of pain, of hurt, of injustice. And time again you step in to bring light, to bring hope, to bring healing. And Lord, I want to thank you that time and time again you choose to do that through us. I want to thank you that your desire is to do that through us. So Lord, today I guess I just want to pray for that. I want to pray for that deeper realization of your heart of love and of kindness and of compassion to us. That we would know that that is so consuming, so powerful, so deep, and that we might know that your heart of love is for us, and that it is for our world, that it is for our community, that it is for our friends, our neighbors, our families. God, you care. You care. And may we know something of what it is, I pray, as a result, to care with the care that you have, the love that you have for the world that you came to save. May your light shine in us. May your healing power be at work in our lives, and may your healing power overflow from us into a world that is desperate for you. We want to be those who are changed from the inside out, that the world that you call us to would reflect more and more of your heart, of the world that you have created it to be. So come even now, I pray, as we worship you by your Holy Spirit. Fill us afresh. Give us boldness. Give us courage. Give us compassion, I pray.